welcome to the Art Magical. Today we have on the show Nic Phillips, author and artist, and currently painting a series of pictures called Queering Deities, which is very exciting, of which I was the first subject. And so come to talk to us today about his work. Hi Nic.
Hello.
So how long have you been interested in pagan ideas?
Okay, well, I was brought up in quite a sort of new age background, so all that stuff was kind of quite normal to me growing up. Got interested in more pagan stuff, I suppose, as a teenager. As a child, I wasn't really so interested. I remember being taken to places like Glastonbury and to Findhorn, and not really being interested at all. But later as a teenager, I think I got more interested. Got my first tarot deck at around the age of 16, I think, which was the John and Kathleen Matthews Arthurian deck. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a really nice deck, but it's probably not the best deck for a beginner because it's very specific. So that was quite a learning kind of experience with the tarot as my sort of first foray, I suppose. I started then making my own like handmade decks, using symbolism and doing kind of Celtic style art. So that whole kind of British Isles kind of Celtic style knotwork and doing all the really intricate stuff. So yeah, it's definitely through art, I suppose, has always been my connection.
Yes, I think the first time I encountered you was the deck you did with Kim.
Yeah,
I was at the launch party, lurking about in the background.
Yeah, so I mean, university was where I suppose it all kind of kicked off, really. Joined the Cardiff University Pagan Society in my first year, and then by second year I was the secretary, and Kim, who was my housemate at the time, was the president of the society. And it was a really nice time. It was really it was quite a well-attended society, as university societies go, and we organised trips around places like Avebury, Stonehenge, Glastonbury, Cornwall. Yeah, it was really nice, and that's when yeah, probably in our second year, I think, of uni, we started coming up with the ideas for this our first deck, which is Sol Invictus God Tarot.
I remember it.
And yeah, it was something that we wanted to do to kind of we thought there's a bit of a gap for things related to gods. We wanted to sort of redress the balance a bit, because there were already quite a few goddess tarots on the market, and as far as we knew, there weren't any god tarots. So yeah, we took a sort of multicultural world mythology approach to it, and yeah, it was published in 2007. Seems a long time ago now.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I was hanging out in Bristol at the time, so just across the River Severn.
Yeah, and after that, we immediately started working on a goddess tarot. And I know I said we found there were lots of goddess tarots already out there, but not all of them were in the same kind of approach that we have, which is very scholarly, like reference. Like I don't know if you've seen the books that come with these, but they are large books. And then it's not really a fan of the little white booklet that comes with the tarot, because you just can't say all the things, all the influences that we wanted to talk about. So these are very heavy in mythology and yeah, we just wanted to balance it out for ourselves as well. So yeah, we spent ages working on a god deck and working with the all the goddesses and saints and heroes. It was just a personal thing as well.
Sounds awesome. Yes,
So that took a few years to do. Tarot decks aren't quick projects, so they probably took about 5 years each.
Wow, that's epic. Yeah.
So the second deck, which is called Pistis Sophia, and that was released last year in Majors Only form.
I remember you starting work on that, I think, for sure.
It was that we started like straight away. So in 2007 we started work on that.
Wow.
And they're both it's Schiffer Publishing, but in its subsidiary as well called Red Feather, who published Pistis Sophia.
Excellent. That would be really exciting to see, because I think it's important. I mean, obviously the God Tarot was really important because people tend to emphasize the witchy archetypes and as a feminine thing, whereas you can have male witches, you can have non-binary witches, so we need more of these archetypes. This is good.
And they're not, it's not like the God Tarot is a deck for men and the Goddess Tarot is a deck for women. They're for everyone. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think there's I see so many books going on about witches as if witches were only women, and it really annoys me. So more God energy, please. Yes, excellent. So how do you get ideas for a series of paintings?
Well, a lot of my paintings are one-offs, but there are a few series in there. I'll show you actually on the screen. Let me just, if I can share. That's an Irish triptych that I did a few years ago. Wow. Which was, it's based on experiences and places I've been, really. So I went around Southern Ireland, went to St. Bridget's Well, I went to Newgrange. So in this set, we've got the Cailleach and her chair, which is a big rock. Yes. On the left-hand side, we've got Bridget, and then we've got St. Golbnet, who is patron of bees and of deer.
Oh wow!
It just to me it just made sense to do those all together, and it makes the colours of the Irish flag as well.
It does. That's very clever.
So a lot of it is really places I've been. I did the series of saints. For my Celtic Saints book. I mean, the paintings really came before the book. I did a series of Cornish saints, and then it was kind of like, there's lots to say about these as well. So that's when I started writing. But I was going to say as well, there's another series that I did, which were Elemental Archangels.
Ooh.
And I did these 4.
Wow.
And I also did a Metatron and a Lucifer. And when you do a series together, you kind of want them to stay together. And I was really pleased that somebody, because I put them all up for sale, and I had individual prices and then a price for all of them. And I was really pleased that somebody bought the whole lot together, because I was like, they get to stay together.
I love those. They're very they look very non-binary to me.
Yes, that was kind of the image, the kind of the idea, really. Especially Gabriel is kind of one that some people identify as male and some as female and some as neither. So
Yeah.
They're quite, I suppose, masculine energy in the fact that they're quite bold and not wispy angels. But
Yes. Yeah. I tend to see angels as like a giant shaft of light. So my angel visual is very, very abstract. But whenever anybody says Metatron, I always think of Alan Rickman in
yes.
in Dogma. So,
that's a brilliant film.
I love that film.
I didn't base it on him, but
maybe you could just do another one with him in it. Yes. I've spent 10,000 years with no bits. Yes.
I need to watch that again.
Yes, so good. Oh dear. Yeah, so what drew you towards painting deities and indeed saints and angels and the like?
I guess it's just a love of mythology and folklore and symbolism. I mean, being a tarot artist, symbolism is the main kind of deal. So
This is true.
and you know, deities have a lot of symbols, and basically I just find like conventional, just, you know, painting a landscape would just bore me to death. So it's got to have some kind of, you know, magical element to it.
Cool.
It's as well, I think, because I do a lot of commissions for people and paint, you know, how they see, how they kind of perceive the deity that they have a personal connection with, and being able to put it into, you know, a visual image and then see their reaction. That's just, it's like really fulfilling.
Oh, I can imagine that. Yeah, that would be so great.
To get it right. I mean, usually I get it right. It does involve like a good bit of conversation about, you know, how they experience them and what symbols are important to them. But yeah, just that moment when they first see it, it's just like yes.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I think for me, a painting is really effective because it's flat. And so a painting becomes a window into that realm. Whereas a statue, you can, you know, I stole this insight from Orthodox Christianity, but it's still true. That with a statue, you can walk around the back of it. With a picture, it's on the wall, so it looks like a window into that realm. And I really like that idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the mind-blowingness of a really good image of a deity, that you get that connection more effectively somehow. Yeah,
and it's not only as well, like people say, oh, you know, that's exactly how I see them. Sometimes people are like, oh, it looks just like my daughter, or and like people, not even people who, you know, the picture's not for, they will come to pick up one of my cards at a stall and be like, oh, you know, this looks just like my so-and-so, and they'll like be drawn to it just because of that.
That is very cool.
It's so there's something, especially I think in the faces, like usually the face and the eyes is usually the very last bit, and that's when they take on the kind of character of that deity, really.
Yeah, the eyes are so important, aren't they? It's very true.
It usually doesn't end up exactly the way that I originally intended it to, but you know, it usually works. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about it's the first thing you have to get over with art, isn't it? That you have a vision in your head, and then what happens on the paper is different.
Yeah.
Even
that's
for those of us who can't draw, this is the thing. So you have to get past that. So yeah, so tell us about your current project. I assume it's still current, the Queering Deities.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's only really just beginning. I've done 4 in the series, but it's kind of open-ended. So what I'm doing is I'm inviting queer people to pose as the deity that they connect with, in order to kind of subvert expectations about how deity is supposed to look, and also to increase LGBT expression in spiritual art, which I think is often quite white, cis-het centric.
Yes.
I mean, there's a whole range, you know, at the low end you have this sort of fantasy art style, not so much these days maybe, but the sort of what I call the impractical boob armor deities.
Yes.
You know, in very sort of, you know, skimpy outfits that kind of, you just like, what? But even in the good stuff, there's this kind of conventional acceptance of how each deity looks, that we kind of go, oh, you know, that's so and so. And to me, the essence of the deity is not in how they look. And I think even like hard polytheists, you know, who believe gods are real and they have these separate entities, would probably agree that the appearance is something that's decided on by their worshippers. Yes,
I mean, I am a hard polytheist, but I don't like the term hard. So I'm more of but anyway, I definitely believe that deities are distinct and have agency. And yes, I think that's really important, that we don't, you know, the image that you see is an interface with the deity that's formed in our brains. So
if you're trying to argue that, oh no, this is how they look, and it's kind of like, well,
no, I don't think anyone would argue that.
No. But I mean, it's usually that it's kind of governed by the, you know, the geographic location and the time period that they, you know, that they were worshipped in originally. And the thing is that today we have such access to, you know, worldwide religions, or you know, knowledge of all these different cultures, and you know, the worshippers today of, you know, a pagan deity are going to be a lot more varied than they were in a locality in, you know, ancient Egypt or in Scandinavia. So whilst the essence may be eternal, how they look doesn't have to be. So that's what I'm kind of playing with here, is sort of unconventional looks.
Yes, actually I have my copy of I have two copies, because you kindly did one on that would fit on Canadian paper, so I will go and get it. We have,
ta-da.
It's a bit shiny, still in the wrapper.
I can actually share it on the screen as well.
That'd be cool. Yes, if you've got it
so
handy.
you can see it properly.
Yeah, the other one is framed downstairs.
Yeah, so this is Queering Odin. So all the titles are queering and then the deity's name. So this was the very first one, and I was very lucky to have a willing challenger, is what I'm calling the people who
I like that,
sitting, because we're challenging expectations and ideas. So this was really fun to paint, and shows what I would say as a very kind of I don't know, I suppose Odin, who stands up for LGBT and also people of colour, isn't going to take tolerate any messing.
Yeah, I love it so much. And the you know, like the way you've got the wolves in, and the Pride Progress flag, and the Hugin and Moonin as well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to use the recognizable symbols of the deity. So, you know, there is, you can recognize that it's Odin.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like, you know, a beardy old man.
Yeah.
And if you can't really see in this, but you've got the rune stones there that spell out LGBTQIA.
Yes.
Which is a nice little touch, I thought.
I really like that. Yeah, and the fact that you've got them rainbow colours as well. It's awesome.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So that was a good start to the series, but I think as well as what I was saying, people like to recognise themselves in deities. You know, they like deities that look, you know, the same colour skin, or I don't know. The queer people will often experience deities in different ways. That they're already queering them themselves. So, for example, one of the others in the series I already painted is someone who sometimes experiences the goddess Bridget in the form of a swan boy.
Ooh.
Which was really, I can show you that one as well, actually.
Cool.
Which is, you know, really different. And this is someone who works in sort of shamanic ways. You can't see the whole thing there, but
I see the swan feathers. Beautiful.
Yeah. So, you know, that, and I'd never come across somebody who, you know, experienced Bridget in that way.
Yeah, I love it.
So it's a collaboration really between me and the person, the challenger, who's, you know, bringing these different experiences. So it's a lot more of an active project, I suppose, in that I'm interacting with people and not just sitting and painting what I feel like.
Yeah, I think it's
so. Yeah, it's a new direction for me.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, I do experience Odin as a queer deity. I think that he went to learn Seidra from a woman.
Yes.
And the thing about being a Seidra practitioner in those days was that most Seidra practitioners were also queer. Or most male Seidra practitioners were also queer. So I think that's important, and the fact that he, you know, travels between the worlds and also his curious relationship with Loki. I mean, because you know, you kind of think Loki's the quintessentially queer deity from that tradition, but for me, Odin is also queer in so many ways. And the fact that he's willing to dare all sorts of risks to find knowledge and transgress boundaries.
Yeah, and there are little just hints in the text, aren't there? And there's so much that we don't know. You know, we're reliant on these medieval interpretations, but there's definitely hints in there that we can pick up on.
I think so. Very cool.
But yeah, this the whole, when I came to think about it, I thought this really kind of follows on from what we were doing in the tarot decks with the ungendering of the court cards. So I thought this has actually been a sort of a thread through, you know, my whole art career, really. In the decks, both Kim and I found that the titles of the court cards are not necessarily that helpful usually, because, you know, what is a queen, what is a page. So we came up with ungendered titles that were a bit more helpful. So we had adepts, nurturers, questers, and awakenings, and they tell you a bit more about what that
that's much
card
better.
is meant to do.
I like that. That's really cool. So and your other recent project has been the Black Madonna book. So
yes,
how did that come about, and how did you go about researching it?
Okay, well, I'm just showing you the cover now, so you can see there's the top part of the cover anyway. It's called Breaking Chains, the Evolution of the Black Madonna.
Beautiful.
And so the Black Madonna interest probably, it was back around sort of 2011, 2012. My housemate at the time was an initiate in voodoo, which is in Britain isn't that common, but there are definitely some around. And our house had all these wonderful ornate altars around the place with items and Catholic saint images on them. And it's kind of like, oh, what are these for? And so I learned that the saint images are used to represent the spirits, and that the Black Madonna in particular is used for a Loire called Ursuli Dantor. And it's usually a particular Black Madonna, which is Our Lady of Częstochowa, the Polish Black Madonna. And it's the one with the scars on the cheek. And there's lots of sort of stories that cross over between the two cultures. But so I decided I'd paint my own rendition of her, and it became popular within this local voodoo group. They all loved the image, and then it ended up being one of my most popular in my my Etsy art store. It's one of the most top-selling designs. Everyone loves the Black Madonna.
Brilliant.
And then I visited some sites, and that inspired some other paintings, some of the Black Madonnas. I've got Montserrat here.
Oh, I love that one, because that really looks like the mountains around the monastery. Very
So when I visited there, it's called Montserrat, which is serrated mountain.
Yes.
But the rocks are so soft looking. To me, it was like a big hand.
Yeah, I love that.
So I decided to paint sort of like the pads of the fingers, and it's sort of cradling the Black Madonna image there.
That's wonderful. I love that. And it's a very good rendition of the of that Black Madonna as well.
Thanks.
Which was a very powerful experience visiting her, for sure.
Yeah. And so after I'd finished my Celtic Saints book, I held a Black Madonna workshop in Glastonbury with a friend. And the research that I did for that provided the basis for the book. It was kind of like one of those things of, this is going to be a book, isn't it? You realise what you've stepped into. There's that moment. It's the same with this Queering Deities project. I was like, there's going to be a book, isn't there?
Yeah. You suddenly realise you've got enough material, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. But I ended up with this kind of really messy brainstorm on a piece of paper with all these connections. And I was looking at like, oh my God, how am I going to start? Where do I start? Kind of thing. And the actual book in the end ended up very different from what I originally thought it was going to be. So I was influenced by a lot of the other Black Madonna books that were already out there. I was interested in one of the esoteric mysteries that are supposed to surround the Black Madonna, and I was looking into the suggested goddess origins for the Black Madonna. So people saying that these are statues of Isis or Artemis, and I was looking into texts to see the similarities. But I was kind of, after a while, I figured I was looking at it all the wrong way around. And a lot of these books that focus on the mystery and this idea of sort of continued goddess worship in the form of the Black Madonna, they really mix up the myths and the history, and it's quite frustrating, and it's unreferenced usually, and it's quite confusing. So when I started finding more academic works on the Black Madonna, it kind of clarified a few things. And what we call the Black Madonnas, these 12th century statues, sort of there's a classification guide of what is a Black Madonna, and usually they're given mythic origins. So they'll say that this was dug up in the 8th century and was centuries older, and in fact they're proven to be pretty much all around the start of the end of the 12th century. And in fact they weren't even called Black Madonnas back then. They weren't experienced as racially black until a few centuries later. We don't see any evidence at all of them being called Black Madonnas, or that people were saying, this Mary is black, as in a black person. The dark color of these statues was intended to make them look more ancient, and therefore be relics of the Holy Land, and relating them to the time of Jesus. So this kind of the stylized kind of Romanesque look of them is to make them look older than what they were, because they were trying to claim, these are, and a lot of them, they claim that they'd found them, brought them back in the Crusades. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing.
Yes.
Not everyone realizes that. So I kind of dropped that thread of trying to find origins and looked forwards to how they're being used in practice in the early modern era. So we've got it's mostly in the Caribbean, Central and South America, where these Catholic images were being used by African people who'd been taken by the slave trade.
Right.
And they were used as to kind of continue to worship their deities, their spirits, under the guises of these Catholic saints. But there kind of came a point where they became inextricable to the essence of that spirit. They were so interconnected that they didn't see them just as a cover anymore. They were, part of that. Then they weren't one and the same, but they were looking at them at the same time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, like an interconnection. Yeah.
And so I talk a lot about that in the book, and different uses of different Black Madonnas in that region, and I talk a bit as well about the desyncretization movement, because there are people who say we should remove these. We don't need these images anymore as covers for these spirits, so chuck them out. But then there's other people who say that they've become that much part of this new culture that grew in the Caribbean that you're removing a vital part of it. So it's a bit of an argument there.
Yes, particularly between Santeria and Verdun, I would imagine.
Yeah. So the book is not what a lot of people are expecting it to be, but I think it's an important side of the story that needs to be told.
Yes, I love a well-referenced book, for sure.
Yes.
Very important. And I think also, if we want paganism to be taken seriously, we do need to remove some of the things where it's just wishful thinking, and go, okay, what are the facts? I think you can make connections between, you can say, well, maybe this is the same archetype, or but the idea that, I think what people have done is they've taken the Verdun thing of using the saints as a cover and back projected it to the early centuries of Christianity, to say, oh, people were using these things as a cover for continuing Isis worship, and
but if you look
doesn't seem to be the evidence for that.
If you look at the span of time between the time when Mary was the declared Theotokos, Mother of God, and that's kind of where around the time when she was competing with Isis and Artemis, and the time between then and when the 12th century statues were made is the same span of time between then and now.
Yeah, that's kind of too long.
It is a long time.
Yeah, it's too long for it to be a connection.
So there are things in the book that may be difficult for some people to accept, but I think it's an important argument.
I think it is, and I think people, there are huge swathes of people. One of my pet peeves is huge numbers of people who seem to think that Mabon is an ancient Celtic festival when it was named that in 1974 by Aidan Kelly, and then the Welsh deity Mabon has nothing to do with that festival. Similarly, the way people conflate Eostre and Ishtar, who are completely different. Eostre gets mentioned once in the Venerable Bede and is absolutely nothing to do with Ishtar at all.
It's the internet, isn't it?
It is,
things get copied from one website to another, and the more times you see them, the more times people will think, oh, that must be true, I've seen that loads of times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is as well, I think if you a lot of the time these things are too neat. The truth is always more complicated than what people think, and if you've got something that's kind of too neat, then it's probably wrong.
Yeah.
Bit like conspiracy theories.
So reference books are always useful.
Yes, I love a good footnote, especially footnotes as opposed to endnotes, because
I hate that, and you're trying to flick back and forwards and you end up not really using it. So
good. Definitely gonna buy your book now if it has footnotes. That's awesome. Because endnotes drive me mad. So sounds like you've got another book in the pipeline, which is the Queering Deities one, which is super exciting.
Yeah, so that is coming after the one I'm currently working on. So I'm promoting one, thinking ahead of another, and working on one for the last sort of year or two, which is a Sacred Animal Oracle.
Excellent.
And it's about 3/4 of the way done. And it's a book accompanied by a deck rather than the other way around.
Right.
So it's a full book about animals in world mythology, and it's 32 cards plus an extra bonus one. They're arranged into 4 element suits, so it's kind of similar to tarot but without the same numbering system. And it's not a find your spirit animal or animal totem book, because we're kind of done with that kind of appropriation, I think. Absolutely. We don't need any more of that. It's more looking into the meanings that humans have ascribed to animals, and what we it's not so much as what's inherent in the animal's nature, but as what traits we project onto them. Yes.
Yeah, when I wrote my book on animals, I found the same thing, that the mythical traits that animals get are really precious little to do with how the animal actually behaves most of the time.
And sometimes there's things, but a lot of it is more kind of representing our relationship with kind of the unknown, the sort of the wild and the subconscious, and our fears and our desires mirrored in these animal archetypes.
Yes, the wolf springs to mind as the most obvious example of that, for sure.
Yeah, that's one I haven't actually written yet. That's one of the last few that I've got to do.
Yeah. I mean, the one I
But
found absolutely fascinating was bees. I ended up with like 12 pages on bees.
Yes, bees was a long chapter. Also snakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very complicated. So there's just so much that I was trying to cut down. So I'm trying to, you know, not go on for too long. I'm trying to keep them kind of a standard size. And some of them, there's so much.
Yeah.
Because of just, you know, the symbol of the snake is so iconic, and kind of it's in every culture. It's, you know, it's life and death and knowledge and all sorts.
Yeah. Now the snake is absolutely fascinating, and also there's like different symbolism for different individual types of snake, and then also all the dragons and stuff as well. So
yeah, I was going to show you as well like a little exclusive one that I've not shared, which is the peacock. You can see the actual image. So this is the peacock of ocean. So each animal is paired with a deity as the sort of primary deity, but then I also have like a section on the animal in other cultures as well. So so this one's all about kind of the border between beauty and vanity and misconceptions about appearances. But also the peacock has a lot of relevance in Indian mythology, so I talk about that as well.
Excellent. Yes.
So there you go. That's just one of them.
Beautiful.
So I've not revealed too much of them. I want to keep the majority of them sort of a surprise. So
we are honoured to see that one. That's lovely. It's really great. So cool. Well, exciting times. Also I remember one time you shared a picture of out of your window where you could see Breen Down from your window. So I don't know if you're in that room.
Not so much. No, it's not from my window. It's from the top of the hill. So if you go out of my house, there's a hill, and walk up through the woods up the hill, and then got the view over Breen Down from there.
Lovely.
So,
yes, I'm very fond of Breen Down. So very cool. Yes, nice to have that nearby.
Yes, Somerset is a nice place to live. We've got Glastonbury for work, and then sort of around Weston for walks. Yeah,
fantastic. Yes, I remember going up Crook Peak on New Year's Day one time. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a great mythical landscape.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're not far from a lot of ancient sites and things. So in this part of the country, there's lots to explore.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on our show, and look forward to seeing all your exciting new projects.
Yes, thank you.